What is happening out there, Roto Scouts football fans? Long time no see, gang. Been a couple days since we've had a live show. I don't know why I specified live. I don't do many recorded shows, if any. Gotta start doing those. I know those are good for the YouTube channel, spreading the word and getting the site name out there. Do a couple like how-to videos and stuff like that. Evergreen stuff, as they call it. One of these days when there's some time. We're already behind schedule as usual with the main slate content, main slate projections, but those will be going up overnight. I've got the projections basically done. Just got to update for any changes and everything in status that went with today's practices. Been working on them through yesterday. Got through all the spot checks. Gonna re-rank everything for today's based on today's info. But we get that up on the site tonight. First cut of the optimizer groups probably go up tonight. We'll ease our way into the weekend with a marathon show sometime tomorrow like we've been doing the last couple of weeks. But tonight, we've got really ugly football game. There's no hiding it. It's just a straight up terrible game. Couple of pieces to work with. New Orleans missing most of them. Remember that really semi-interesting looking passing offense that New Orleans brought to the field the first couple of weeks? That's pretty much gone. No more Olave, no more Shaheed, no Derek Carr. Instead, we get Spencer Rattler. We do get some upside with Kamara. We'll see what we get there. Denver kind of at full strength, but a little bit more, defense focused. Not scoring all that much. Rookie quarterback who's just been kind of okay. But a couple pieces up and down. I keep glancing this way because I've got the Yankee game on over there. Just as I was about to go live, Clark Schmidt gave up a two-run shot to, I think it was Manzardo. Now, it looks like I think he just walked somebody. It's not been a good third inning for Clark Schmidt. Yeah, man on first for Naylor. I want to say this is Naylor. Anyway, kind of an ugly football game to work with, but as usual, we've got. That doesn't change the prize pool. It doesn't change the opportunity. It doesn't change the way that we need to put these pieces together. So we've got a lot to look at. We'll dive on in. Anthony Taylor's here. Happy NFL Thursday to you too, pal. Hit the thumbs up on your way in. Handful of people here already. I know we'll get more as the show goes on. Make sure you check out at Roto Scouts. Make sure you follow the at Roto Scouts Twitter handle. But make sure, more importantly, you check out rotoscouts.com. All your needs for showdown projections for NFL tonight. The NFL main slate. NHL tonight. NHL, hidden little gem of an 11-game main slate for NHL. Every single player projected for that one. Several hundred of those. Across all the different lines. If you haven't looked, I do all the line combinations for you. I put the power play information in there for you. All the projections, all the goaltenders. So all the information there's at your fingertips. Right now, no rankings, no, stack combinations or top stacks or anything like that. One of these days, maybe we'll get to that point with NHL, but at least we're providing projections. So that's up on the site. We've got baseball is up there tonight. Baseball obviously winding down, but basketball, I was just outside the line. Basketball about to start up next week, so those will be trading off. Hey, go lie down. Joker's excited about it. So you get all that content, every projection, every data point, every piece of content, every tool, every ambulance going by outside, all for under $1 a day, regardless of which plan you choose. It's basically just a matter of how often you want to pay, weekly, monthly, or quarterly. Those scale slightly, but every single plan under $1 a day, full access to all of the content for every sport. 8Game asks if Ace Mind has NHL. I believe no, they don't currently look like they have NHL. I have NHL projections, but I do not believe they have tools for NHL. They might be working on something in the background. It's probably, I would imagine, for them would be fairly easy to flip the baseball model into a hockey model. Right now over at AceMind, acemind.io, where we do our sims, we'll be looking at sim results for this slate later on. But right now they've got MLB is live, PGA is live, MMA, and NFL. And I'm sure they'll have the NBA up for the season. They had it all last year. I'm sure they're just working on the new interface, new model. But that'll, I'm sure, be up there in the next couple of days. But check them out as well. Promo code RotoScouts, all in caps, gets you 20% off your first month over at acemind.io. And again, every plan at RotoScouts is under $1 a day. So give it a look. Access to everything. Right now, ugly slate to talk about, but we got to get into it. 8-game saying it's funny, even Stochastic doesn't have hockey on their sim tool. It's just, I'm sure, a matter of wanting to, invest the development time into doing it. And from it's just, there's so many fewer people that play it in such smaller prize pools that people don't tend to chase it as much. So it's, serving the smaller market is, from a cost benefit analysis for them, I'm sure, not worth it. For me, it's right now going to be a lot of work to get that NBA done every day, but we'll see if it's worth it. But I'm at least going to try and have projections all through the season, and then it's essentially a clone for baseball as far as the approach. You want to be stacking top lines. You always want to be stacking guys that are on the same lines or at least the same power plays, so that you're picking off all the correlated scoring for every scoring event, because it's so few and far between as far as scoring events. I like to get my discount plays at defense. If I can correlate defense from like a power play 2 or something like that, so much the better. I'll take what I get at goaltender. It's a lot like pitcher. If I can get a low-cost goalie who people aren't going to that I think projects out well, I'll absolutely go to that. But yeah, the lack of tools, I think it just makes sense. Yeah, as you're saying, it's MLB, NBA, and NFL are just dominant. And a lot of people just approach hockey that way. They only dive in when it's the only game in town, like it was a couple days ago. But yeah, it makes sense that those guys will be slow. But I know that I'm sure they'll have the NBA tool up over the next couple days over there, and projections will be live. Not doing the preseason for NBA, but day one projections will be live. So get ready. It's gonna be fun. Bo Nix up top for Denver, going up against Spencer Rattler. Neither quarterback exactly lighting things up. Nix is leading by a little bit, just based slightly on a couple more games under his belt. Based slightly on facing by far the worst of these two defenses. Rattler and the Saints going to be going up against what has been a very capable Denver defense so far. Denver giving up just 4 yards per rush attempt. That ranks 6th. They've given up 6 yards per pass attempt. That ranks 2nd. Yes, I did update that column. 28.9% pressure rate, and they've come away with 22 sacks. That sack rate for Denver, 10.33%, ranks 3rd in the league. Middle of the board as far as the interception rate, but they've come away with a few. On the New Orleans side, the secondary's been good. 2nd in football with those 10 interceptions, 4.52% interception rate, ranks 2nd overall. Just a 6.36% sack rate. Just 15 sacks on the season. That ranks 24th in what is now a growing sample. 7 going into week 7. We're a third of the way through the season. 5.2 yards allowed per rush attempt ranks 30th. 7.5 yards per pass attempt ranks 24th. So you can definitely bounce your way down the field against this team. 1.2 rushing touchdowns allowed per game. Overall at 1.3 through the air. So just kind of middle of the board as far as touchdowns, but can definitely score against them. It's just the quality of the secondary as far as picking the ball off has gone. For the season, Nix is at 5 touchdowns against 5 interceptions. So I think there's reason to expect that the New Orleans defense might get involved here, at least with an interception. And if you're feeding them the upside for an interception, then within that, there is some upside that guy takes it back to the, returns it all the way. Takes it to the house, as they say. I was stumbling over that. So feeds the upside for some defense there, I think, on both sides. The Denver defense, I think, is the more obvious of the two, just given all they've done as far as production goes and as far as just shutting down other teams has gone. But I think the New Orleans team is with as well as that secondary can play as far as picking the ball off and getting involved that way. I definitely think it puts them on the board. So far, though, they've allowed 24.5 points per game. Again, it's not like they've been necessarily good. They've allowed a ton of yardage, 30th ranked against the run and 24th against the pass. It's just a matter of what kind of upside does that really feed us. Javonte Williams, not a huge fan. Kind of a little bit of a timeshare with Jaleel McLaughlin. Audric Estime getting involved now for a couple of snaps. It's still Javonte Williams as far as the majority of the action goes. 67% of the snaps last week, 59% on average. Jaleel McLaughlin played 25%. Estime got in there for 4%. But it's not the best running game. You're throwing him up against a defense that's allowed plenty of yardage, so it does project out fairly okay for Javonte. One of the higher end projections on the board, but he pales in comparison to Alvin Kamara if you're just looking to take one running back and then lean into the passing in this game. I don't know necessarily that the total supports that idea. 37-point total, Denver favored by 2.5 on the road in New Orleans. Just an ugly, ugly low-end game. As far as Javonte goes, start there. Last time out, carried the ball just 6 times for 23 yards. Caught 3 passes on 6 targets for another 13 yards. The week before that, 13 carries on 35 snaps, 61 yards. 77 yards was his peak. That came in week 4. So again, a lot of mediocre output. Gaining just 3.6 yards per rush attempt on just under 10 attempts per game puts him in the 30-yard range. Upside to 70, 75, but just 1.9 before, 1.7 after. He hasn't been in the end zone on the ground yet this season. Hasn't been in the end zone at all this season. McLaughlin just gaining 3.2 yards per attempt, carrying the ball just 6 times a game. He dipped in volume last week. He went down from 23 snaps in week 5, 19 snaps in week 4, down to 13 with the offense in week 6. Carried the ball just 3 times, down from 6 for 22 yards in week 5 and 9 for 46 yards in week 4. He dipped to 3 carries for 8 yards, caught 2 of 2 for 17 yards. Week before, he caught 3 of 4 for just 3 yards, but scored a touchdown in the passing game. He's got 1 on the ground and 1 through the passing game so far on the season, but really limited for volume if you're Jaleel McLaughlin. We're talking about for this season, week 1 was his peak. He had 15 actual touches that week. Every other week, it's been single digits. Or just into 10 in weeks 4 and 5. And then Estime got in there, 2 snaps with the offense, 6 on special teams, carried the ball twice for 13 yards. That's productive, but the volume is obviously incredibly small. As far as let's say, and no real, I know people like him, but there's no real heat for him getting any significantly more opportunity in that, considering that it's game 2 back after missing 4 weeks. Maybe he sees a third carry, a fourth carry, but it's really limited. You're going to need him to absolutely break one, and it's limited even for a showdown, where typically we can go to small volume plays. 2 carries for a running back is a lot different by and large than, say, 2 targets for a secondary tight end, a low-owned tight end, like, say, Luke Kroll down here. Troutman for 600. So it's really low-end opportunity. He played in week 1 as well. He played 3 snaps that week. He carried the ball 2 times that week, also gained 14 yards. It was a very similar game. He ran one route that week. He ran no routes this past week. As far as the passing game, Nix completed 19 of 33 in week 6. The 33 was his fourth highest total, of the week, but his highest total in the last 3 weeks. threw 2 touchdown passes, but again, only gained 216 yards, threw an interception, still has yet to get over 250 yards. It took him until week 4 to throw his first touchdown pass. As we saw just a minute ago, he's got 5 touchdowns against 5 interceptions. He's gaining 5.5 yards per pass attempt. That is not significant at all. 7.9 intended air yards per attempt is okay, but just 3.4 air yards per attempt as far as completed passes goes. It's just been kind of meh, but has also run the ball in 3 times. Running the ball overall 6.2 attempts per game for 4.9 yards per attempt, 30-ish yards a game. He's been a contributor. He hasn't been, as far as DFS goes, he hasn't been necessarily bad. So for a showdown slate for this game, we're absolutely firing away with Bo Nix shares. It's just, you limit your expectations for overall scoring in this game. I do like kind of the idea of maybe, quote gun throwing the blanket over some rushing touchdowns from the Denver side maybe, and just consider taking the quarterback anyway because he's got a rushing touchdown upside to go with it, and with whatever he does with his arm. And then maybe you grab both of Javonte and Jaleel McLaughlin, or if you're an Esteem believer, you go that way. Is it Estime? Is it Esteem? I haven't actually heard it said out loud. I think it's Esteem, but I don't actually know. Fine with Sutton captain, Trey. We'll look at some lineups. Just based on his involvement, based on the volume, I mean, his target upside is great. His touchdown upside is great in this offense. Last week, 6 targets, caught 4 of them for 53 yards and a touchdown. Week before, 5 targets, caught just 2 of them for 32 yards and no touchdown. Week before that, 3 catches, 60 yards and a touchdown. Those are 3 games that are just perfectly, perfect examples of his involvement. He was targeted 9 times in the week 4 game. He peaked at 12 targets in week 1, 11 targets in week 3. But he was the target leader on this team last year. He was significantly involved. He would be my go-to as far as this passing game if you just said, in a vacuum as far, don't worry about ownership or cost or anything, just who's going to be the highest scoring potential skill player from the Denver side. He's the guy I would pick. Joke. Stop. He'll be the highest owned in that role. But he would definitely on volume be the guy I would pick. As far as other guys in that passing game, you do have very cheap options like Troy Franklin for just $3,045 in the captain role, $8,000 on FanDuel. Projects out for just a little bit. He caught 2 balls for 31 yards and a touchdown last week. He also carried the ball once for 5 yards. Was targeted just 3 times on 30 routes. That was by far a season high in routes run. The previous week he had run 6. Before that he had run 8. Limited participant leading up to that week, but definitely got way more involved last week. Devon Villay got out there for the first time since week 1. He caught 4 balls for 78 yards. Back in week 1, he had caught 8 of 8 for 39 yards. Not a significant yardage total, just 4.9 per target, but he did catch 8 of 8 that week. Last week, 4 of 6 for 78 yards, 13 yards per target. He ran 30 routes, played 34 snaps. Significant involvement for Villay. Further down the board, you get Lil Jordan Humphrey. You get Marvin Mims. They're basically splitting like 30 snaps. 17 for Humphrey last week, 15 for Mims, 11 the week before for Mims. Humphrey had 37 and 38 the week before that. He had been much more involved snaps-wise, and he was running more routes. But then dipped with Villay coming back and with the increased involvement with Franklin. So I would expect between 17 and 20-something routes. Low routes for either one of those guys. The opportunities have been pretty limited regardless of how many routes either one of those guys has run. Humphrey saw 8 targets back in week 3, but neither one of them has seen more than 2 or 3 targets in any other week. Outside of his week 2 involvement, he saw 5. Every other week, the target high was 3 for Marvin Mims last week. So it's very limited involvement for those receivers. As far as the nature of the targets, which becomes the important part, Marvin Mims, a 22.5 yard ADOT, so he's drawing just 1.3 targets a game overall. Again, it was 3 last week, before that, and just 1 the week before, 1 the week before that. He's caught 3 balls all season, and he hasn't been over 10 yards. But he does represent a downfield target, given the average depth of target of more than 20 yards. It's 11.8% of their air yards, regardless of the fact that he's drawing so few targets. Franklin, a 14.1 yard ADOT, is definitely a significant downfield option as well. That gives you plenty of air under the ball. He scored once already, 13.8% of the air yards going in his direction. You can see that Cortland Sutton is both a downfield option at 13.3 yard ADOT and the just absolute volume monster on that team with 41.5% of the air yards. Basically all of the passing game goes in his direction. 2 touchdowns on the season. He's a very significant weapon, 7.8 targets a game. So again, there's major upside there. As far as the tight end position, Luke Kroll came back week 5. Didn't play in each of the first 4 weeks. Played 18 snaps week 5. Ran just 9 routes. He was targeted once. He caught it for 5 yards. No big deal. Played 34 snaps last week. Ran 29 routes. Picked up 4 targets. Caught 2 balls for 11 yards. Again, no major deal as far as the output goes. But the 4 targets is interesting in a fairly limited passing game. The fact that he ran so many routes and played so many snaps is definitely interesting. Greg Dulcich didn't play, so we'll see what happens as far as the balance goes. Actually, Dulcich out again this week. Adkins is in there. Adkins played 14 snaps, ran 6 routes. He had played 28 snaps and 26 snaps the 2 weeks before that, so he got cut down in favor of Kroll. And then Troutman went from 31 snaps to 15 snaps. So a little bit of back and forth probably between these two, and then Adkins just basically off the board on low volume and despite the extreme low cost. I don't think it's completely out of the question that you could see a target go in Troutman's direction for your $600 on DraftKings. It's just expect very limited volume. He's run 5, 8, and 4 routes over the last 3 weeks. He's drawn 1 target combined over those 3 weeks. He's drawn 3 targets combined all season long. So again, I do think the tight end volume favors Kroll. At 1,000, he's only 400 more. There's a little bit of playable upside there on a showdown slate. Estime. We'll get there. What's up, Jake? Powers here. Dennis is here. I like Dennis's approach to telling me how to pronounce it. Just typing how his name is spelled. Joanne Sluice, you're very welcome. Thank you for coming by and welcome. I don't recognize the handle, Joanne, so welcome to the show and the channel. Like, subscribe if you like what you're getting. Rotoscouts.com. Thank you for reminding me to plug. OMG Lols is here. Howdy. What's going on? So Rotoscouts.com, like I've been saying, every single plan under $1 a day gives you access to football. Right now it's football, main slate, showdown, every slate. Hockey, every main slate. Baseball, every main slate. NBA coming up next week, every main slate. Tons and tons of content and value, every data point, every projection. Right now, more tools, and rankings and everything for football, as most places do. But I'll put something together for providing the percentages that we talk about on NBA shows. Remember, I was running Sims and showing ROI percentages and upside percentages and everything for NBA last year. So I'll put that up into the under the site somehow. The best way for me to do it, if they're out there, if the Ace Mind guys want to run their shit once a day and just send it to me in like the afternoon, we could publish that as like, per Ace Mind. A little cross promotion there. Make my life easier as far as putting that together. Greg saying I got to get more NBA DFS in this year. Hey, no way to do it like getting inexpensive projections so that you can load up and use your bankroll the smartest way possible for you, the biggest upside way possible for you, rather than carving out hundreds of dollars a month for projections. Put those precious dollars of your bankroll into actual lineup building. We only ask for a tiny, tiny little bit. Equinemius St. Brown potentially taking the field for the New Orleans Saints? How could that possibly be? Well, it's probably because their top two receivers are out. No Chris Olave. Rashid Shaheed getting surgery, went on IR today. Major letdown to those of us who drafted Rashid Shaheed late in every single league and were benefiting from it quite nicely. That sucked. Yet another good value receiver chopped down this season. It's been a brutal season for injuries. I think all you guys know that. Don't need me to harp on that. But definitely, look, creating some downfield value for the diminished Saints. They're on the short side of the Vegas line, but not by much. Again, Denver favored by just 2.5. It's just a 37-point total. It's Spencer Rattler at the helm. He wasn't completely terrible in his debut. I certainly underestimated him. Completed 22 of 40. That's just 55%, but threw for 243 yards, threw a touchdown pass. Did throw 2 interceptions. I don't think we should let that slip by. I think a lot of people are maybe overlooking that. 4 carries for 27 yards. He was involved 6.8 yards per rush attempt. He's an interesting quarterback with the obvious skill set for running the ball a little bit. It's just this Saints team is going to be running headlong into what has been a very tight defense this year. Again, Denver's D allowing just 4 yards per rush attempt, 6 yards per pass attempt. That ranks 6th and 2nd in football. They've got a significant pass rush that's got a significant sack rate behind it. They haven't been great in the secondary as far as picks, so maybe some of the downfield shots work a little bit for this passing offense. But it depends on how, are they going to be able to keep Spencer Rattler upright? Is he going to be jangly as far as his nerves go? What's the issue going to be there? So it could just be another day of major upside potential for Alvin Kamara. Last time out, I was talking about Kamara's potential volume uptick, and he ended up getting basically about his usual. Played 49 snaps. He picked up 13 carries. He also was targeted 8 times. That mirrors what he got the week before. He had 11 carries and 8 targets that week. Prior to that, he had 19 carries and 9 targets, 26 carries and 3 targets. The volume went down a little bit and then kind of stabilized in that 11 to 13 carry, 8-9 target range over the last few weeks. But I could see some upside, especially if they're having a little bit of difficulty against this defense, but Denver's not exactly running away from their defense, which is very much how this game could go. I think we all know that this game could be 10-6 at the end of the first half. That actually might be a high score for this game. 6-3. Speaking of which, the kicker's most definitely going to be involved here. I think you could play the kicker from either side. I've been a fan of Will Lutz for quite a while, since his days kicking back in this stadium. A little bit of revenge for the kicker, if you believe in that sort of thing. Blake Groupie, perfectly playable at 5,000, 7,500. We'll get into some lineup builds and see how they fit, but nothing wrong with playing either kicker, and definitely you can see the game script going in that direction if they're just bashing into the Denver defense, but Denver's not doing that much scoring. They're playing between the 30s and kicking field goals. Defenses and kickers could easily be involved in this slate. And that's been kind of the theme of this year, right? Overall for the season, Rattler's numbers that I just read off before are Rattler's numbers, but Kamara gaining 4.1 yards per rush attempt, 17.3 carries a game. Again, significant volume going in his direction. Still 6 targets overall a game. That amounts to 23.3 potential opportunities a game, and we know that he can see upside into the 30 range. We also know that he's got multi-touchdown upside. He's got 6 on the board already this season. He's got 1 receiving touchdown. Had the monster game in week 2, 3 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown that week. So the output across the other games has actually been a little bit sporadic. It's not like he's putting the ball in the end zone reliably every single game, but the ceiling is very, very significant with Alvin Kamara. I don't think I need to sell anybody here. Alvin Kamara doesn't exactly catch the ball down the field all that often, just a 0.7 yard ADOT, 1.81% of the air yards, but puts up 6.6 yards per target on the screen passes that he catches, little dump outs. He's got 1 touchdown through the passing game, catching 4.7 of 6 targets a game. Bub Means got involved and potentially going to be involved again here. Where is Bub? There's Bub. Played 46 snaps with the offense last week. Caught 5 balls for 45 yards and a touchdown. That was on 8 targets, 35 routes run. All of that was by far season highs. had been minimally involved before that, hadn't played more than 6 snaps with the offense, was targeted once all the way back in week 1 and not again until last week. So kind of burst on the scene last week in the absence of some other receivers. 4,000, 6,000, 8,500 on FanDuel. Very, very playable with some upside in the passing game for Bub. Juwan Johnson, I expect to continue to increase in involvement here. He went up to 50 snaps last week. The first 3 weeks he played snaps in the 20s, 22, 23, 28, then jumped up to 47, 40, and 50 over the last 3 weeks. Ran 35 routes. That was also a season high. That was up from 26 the week before, 22 the week before that. Was targeted just 3 times, but he caught them all. 3 for 3 for 48 yards. That was a season high as far as yardage. The week before, he had caught 5 of 5, but just for 31 yards. He was a significant piece for them as far as target volume, as far as red zone targeting. Did a little bit of scoring for them last season. So in the absence of their key receivers, I do expect Juwan Johnson to be a little bit involved in this passing game. Said played 35 snaps last week. Was targeted 3 times on his 26 routes. Caught 2 of 28. Looking at the season-long numbers is a little bit silly with guys who have barely played, but that's kind of what we've got. Said's targets have been on a 12.5-yard ADOT. He's picked up 1.8 per game. He has played basically every game, but before last week's 3 targets, he had only been targeted once the entire season. Had not run more than 9 routes in any given week. 9 was actually the high by 3 above a 6-route week in week 3. So his involvement was really, really thin until last week. I do expect him to be out there running a decent amount of routes. They've got Mason Tipton. They've got ESB. Tipton ran 21 routes, played 27 snaps. Caught 1 ball for 15 yards on his 2 targets last week. Was targeted 4 times on 18 snaps, 18 routes in week 5 against KC. He's only 1,600, 2,400 you can get awfully cheap with these New Orleans receivers. It's just, what does the actual quality look like? Tipton's targets have come on a short ADOT, 5.3-yard ADOT. Hasn't done any scoring, just 0.7 targets a game. He had run 27 routes in week 4, but again, had not been targeted more than the 4 times that he was targeted in week 5. Prior to that, just 5 targets all season. Foster Moreau played 33 snaps, ran just 13 routes each of the last 2 weeks, 2 targets each of the last 2 weeks, but a couple of decent catches. He scored a touchdown in week 5, which from that position for that price, with what will be very low ownership on a showdown slate, could be somewhat significant involvement in what we expect to be an ugly low-scoring game. And then in week 6, he caught 2 of 2, but he put up 54 yards. So there is still a little bit of involvement for Foster Moreau, and he's out there playing snaps. So every now and then again, they'll break him off for a route, and he might catch a pass. If he happens to fall down in the end zone with it or pick up a big gain, again, on a showdown slate where a couple of points from one of these spots could be enough. I'm not advocating necessarily like Captain Foster Moreau. I'm not even really advocating Captain Juwan Johnson, although I do think you can do that. But as far as flex position upside, I definitely think it's there for this kind of a slate. ESP's just gotten elevated from the practice squad. I have no idea if he's going to be targeted at all. He would probably be the last man out of this group to pick up targets, but he is going to be out there. He is going to suit up. This might be a little bit generous for your 200, 300. That's probably going to make him come up in an optimizer a little bit much. You might want to lower that, which I probably will. Actually, you know what? I'm going to pull that up on the site right now and just dip that a little bit. It feels a little heavy, right? Is that a little generous for ESB? First game with this team. Power saying Rattler's going to have to do something because the one good thing Denver D is good against is pass-catching running backs. Well, that's not going to help the upside for Kamara. Knicks has like 40-some% red zone carries, and I am behind on stream. Yeah, his red zone carries, I think I got that here. That's how a quarterback comes up with that many rushing touchdowns in so few games. He carried the ball 5 times in the red zone against Vegas. That was his season high. He didn't carry the red zone in week 4. Carry in the red zone in week 4. 2 red zone carries in week 3. 1 in each of the first 2 weeks. And again, what was it? 3 rushing touchdowns on the season for Knicks. So yeah, heavy involvement when they get in close. It's like a worse version of Hurts. I'm not actually making that comparison, just with the touchdown scoring from in close. So yeah, ESB down there, be wary of that. I think I probably should limit that. And then Kendra Miller's checked in 6 straight DNPs, but I believe is expected to be out there. Wouldn't expect much upside from him. We skipped over Jamal Williams. Always a little bit of touchdown-based upside for Jamal. More than capable of bursting through for one, but probably would need to pick up carries in close. 4.5 attempts per game. Putting up... I clicked away from the dashboard. I was one column off. Putting up just 3.8 yards per rush attempt. He's got a touchdown on the season, but very, very limited involvement. If they are focused on the run pretty significantly in this game, then maybe he picks up additional opportunities. You'd like to see more involvement. You'd like to see a couple of additional touches. His touch high for the season came in week 1 by a pretty wide margin. 12 potential touches, 12 potential, 12 actual touches that week. Since then, he hasn't seen more than the 8 that he got in week 2. So it's been very, very thin. Doesn't really run routes. He's just in there to take the tough carries, the straight ahead carries. Had a carry in the red zone in each of the 4 weeks, but not one in either of the last 2. But again, it is kind of like the tight end position where you just need that one key red zone carry in this case, where he bursts into the end zone at low ownership, and you've hit a pretty decent jackpot there as far as the showdown slate goes. So not off the board by any means. Let me just cut that projection down a little bit. Pull up the actual sheet here. Yeah, it's like a point high. If I just cut this in half. Perfect. If I just cut it in half, it goes down to right about what he averaged in his action last year. All right, so that's 178. Just bear with me one second. So it cuts down below 2. 1.78 on FanDuel, 1.98 on DraftKings. I'm just going to update that manually real quick. I know real quick already passed us by on this one. All right. That'll still come up a little bit, I would think, at that low price. So just be wary of that spot, because, again, I really don't know what the involvement's going to look like there. Just activated from the practice squad to fill some absences. Charlie's car is out of gas tonight. Good to see you, Charlie. We know. Appreciate it, though, buddy. We talked Rattler already, so let's jump into some lineup building. Hit the like button if you're here. Check out our guys over at Ace Mine. We're going to pull up some Ace Mine sims and look at the results in that in just a minute. Let's make sure. This is all, should be all good here. I just want to make sure I have that tournament size. Usually this hasn't changed this year. Last year, they bounced around the sizes of this tournament a lot more. Yeah, 117, 647. Yeah. Perfect. I'll check the FanDuel one when we get there. There's a lineup from the other day. How'd that one do? I don't remember what Lazard did, but Knox scored a touchdown. Ray Davis was pretty decent. I don't know how that lineup actually did, but it looks like it might have been okay. I think the most obvious and straightforward thing that we should do first here, just to take care of it, is to talk Kamara captain. That's by no means my favorite choice there, but it's going to be super popular, and it's going to come up at least some in our sim results. I'm going to cheat behind the scenes here, see how much he came up. Woo-hoo! Wow. Oh, wait, that's... all right, good. That would have been concerning. It was still set to 20. Let's see. And, wow, that's that is a meaty number. All right, well, yeah, we should definitely take care of this first then. I know you guys couldn't see that, but so if we're going Kamara, we'll give Bo Nix a little bit of upside. Why don't we could go? Let's just see what that. Make this entire thing rush focused. Like I said, I don't hate the idea of just that 3-man combo and trying to throw a blanket over the rushing touchdown upside from Denver. Because you get it from the quarterback. You get it, obviously, from the pairing of the running backs. I didn't deliberately... I mean, I did deliberately do that. I didn't put Kamara in there thinking that I would do that. But I think that actually kind of makes sense as a narrative for this game. And then I do still think that you could play, if you go Kamara in the captaincy, you could easily play the Denver defense against there for 4,800. And that cheapens you up a little bit. Now you got 35 to spend, but you got all these cheap options down the board to work with as far as the wide receiver position, some of the backup tight end options. So it's very easy to get pretty different here. I don't hate the idea of throwing another Saints player in there, or maybe the kicker into this, or you could go double D. You couldn't go double D at 35, 5,200 there. Mims. Franklin's really cheap, but he'll be more popular. I don't hate the idea of this. 95 dupes. Holy shit. All right. Changed my mind. Don't like that. I didn't notice that had been at 1,200. Hold on. Denver's defense isn't in there. That's why. I was going to say. It'll still be high, but it won't be that high. That's better. It's still higher than I would want, but that's a lot more like it. I think there's very few paths where you're gonna, you're gonna be spending all your money and not be leaving money on the table tonight. So I think it is just, as one way to measure how you might be getting further afield. Just keep tabs on how much money you're leaving on the table. The more you leave, the further afield you'll probably get with some of these lineups. So we don't go with Denver's defense. They're fairly popular. Go Kroll for a really cheap price. The Conqueror in there. And then you could go back up the board if you did that and get like Jawan. That's only 13. That's not terrible. Again, feeding the idea of like that low scoring, plotting kind of a game that's just, 37 points in Vegas separated by 2.5. That's not a terrible version of this game. The tight end involvement. You need those guys to score or at least, be involved in the passing attack, but that does seem pretty likely. I'm going to keep Johnson. Let's see what else I can do. 15. You could go Johnson Mims. Same idea, different position, obviously, on the Denver side. That's back to 18, though. A little Jordan down the board. You can't get him and Johnson, but you could go him and... You get Lutz. You could go to Bub Means is only 4,000. That's just silly. Wow, that's not that high owned. 12 dupes on that? Putting Bub in there? I'm surprised. Huh. I didn't actually think that was going to be that low when I grabbed it. What if you want like... That goes way up. Oh, you also can't do that salary-wise. 43. Wilson, I don't want to pad that up too much, though, without the correlation. Huh. What do they have Bubs' ownership at? Not insignificant. You could throw a Moreau dart at that. It's not terrible, but again, I don't love doubling up pass catchers without the correlation. That's more for a Rattler lineup. If you were to do that, and you could go... Then you could do this. That's 20 dupes, though. Put set into that equation. That's probably the way to take that one. That's I know it's ugly looking, but that's not a terrible approach to this game either. It puts a little bit more faith, obviously, in the upside of the New Orleans passing attack. But they don't need to be great. They just need to be moderately competent, and they were moderately competent last week. As far as getting under 10 dupes, just throwing a manual lineup together with upside, you're doing the same. You're taking that approach of trying to pick off a rushing touchdown from the Denver side. But if you don't fully want to do that, you could just pop Jaleel out of there, and now you've got 10-8 to spend on Cortland Sutton. That's exactly his price. This is going to be a super popular version of this lineup, though. It goes up to 17 dupes. That's obviously crazy playable. It would not surprise me if that lineup just went out and won the tournament. But the other ways to build it are going to be lower owned. So if they happen to get there, if Cortland Sutton doesn't get involved, let's say they get in close and Sutton's double covered in the end zone. Jaleel's in there, throws a block and then springs off his block, gets open, and they hit him with a short little pass behind, a little screen pass behind the line of scrimmage, breaks it for 9 yards and a touchdown. And now you're due with half as many people and you're splitting a lot more money. It's not a bad approach. Let's get off this construction, though. Let's get a Sutton captain. We'll give it Nix again. We'll give it Kamara on the flex because he's just going to be... Kamara's going to be in 90+% of lineups probably today. He's just going to be crazy highly owned. So anything that you do that doesn't include him is just going to be lowered as far as duplications go, which isn't a crazy thing to do. I would say undercutting Kamara, but not anywhere near a fade. Maybe would be the approach for the super contrarian people out there. But there are ways to build with Kamara still, I think, where you can get unique enough. Again, especially with all these cheap pieces to work with. Evening, Andy. What's going on, buddy? I like evening as a greeting. Just seems casual, like you're just strolling by. We're all just sitting out on like the front stoop talking football, and you're just like walking up, smoking your pipe, smoking a joint, whatever you're into. Strolling up and just evening, everybody. Andy, what's going on, pal? Pull up a seat. Hit that thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up. Crack a beer. Let us know what you think of the slate. Check out rotoscouts.com if you haven't already. Projections, content, every single sport, $1 a day, less than $1 a day. I gotta get used to saying less than. Let's get some kicker and defense action in here. This is what everybody really came to see, right? Everybody loves the kickers and defenses this year. What do we do here? 9,400. Now we got 24 left. Get tipped it into that easily enough. That's going to be fairly low owned. 19. Go down the board to Krull. I think Krull is kind of an interesting... Look what he did to that ownership. That's not a terrible option for 1,000. Just needs to catch a couple of looks. If he gets the targets, he's won the day, regardless of whether he catches them. Not won the day, like actually made money, but like it was an okayish decision. What he does for ownership is interesting. No guarantees, obviously. We're talking about a 1 week uptick in volume. But it did happen. Again, we went from 4 straight DMPs to 18 snaps, 9 routes run, 1 target, up to 34 snaps, 29 routes run. So we ran 20 more routes, was targeted 4 times, doubled his volume. He caught 2 passes and gained 11 yards versus the 1 and 5. So we get that, and now we get maybe the over the top for the touchdown for 1,000. I'll take 4 targets for 1,000 from an offense that's going to throw the ball like 26 times. It's not completely terrible. It's no different really than going to Jaleel McLaughlin, Seth Wilson, any of those guys up there. Give Bo a shot in the captain role. If I'm captaining Bo, I do want to have correlation as far as at least one of his pass catchers, but you do have that rushing upside, obviously, to help you. So if you went completely uncorrelated, it wouldn't be completely crazy. You could say, throw him and Javonte together, the defense, the kicker, and then 2 guys from the other side, and not be completely nuts. Especially because if they throw 1 passing touchdown and you miss it, as long as you cover it with a touchdown in the spots that you're going to it differently, it doesn't necessarily kill you because you're getting the guy who threw it in the multiplier spot anyway. So while I want the correlation, I can kind of forgo it given the nature of this offense and the quarterback and what they do with the ball. And I do think that'll help you get pretty different here. And then 84 left per spot. You could easily go... you could easily go Rattler and Juwan. 28 dupes. It's the most popular way to do it, or one of the more popular ways to do it. That's a lot less popular. Rattler and Groupie, 24.5. It's not ideal, but again, if you're splitting $1 million 24 ways, there are worse things. You went with Bub. 41. That's kind of a lot. Can we get the big guy in there? Yeah, we got plenty of money to work with Kamara in there. Jeez. If you do that, you probably want to get this a little bit more different. Obviously, I got my little cheat code down there. Get it even with Krolla, it only goes down to about 12. Leaving 41 on the table. If you want like Little Jordan, that gets you under 10 at least. But again, you're really limiting some opportunities with Little Jordan. 1 target last week, 3 targets over the last 2 games. In week 5, he did catch 2 of 2 for 48 yards, though. No touchdowns on the season. But a significant downfield shot here and there for just 2,000, and it gets you below 10. And if he happens to catch it and roll into the end zone with it, you're separate from the field in what is otherwise a pretty chalky construction. Since we've got the money to spend, you could do that too, and you're still only... That's probably a better lineup. Like, just take the correlation since we're so low anyway. Just take the correlation. That plays. And it's probably the exact same opportunity if it's Marvin in there, but double the ownership or double the dupes. So just know that either way, you're going to a limited guy with small opportunities to succeed, small opportunities to put up a big score. But the nature of the few opportunities that he gets are potentially big score opportunities. Right? So it's different than going to a guy with a 5-yard 8-out who catches everything over the middle and falls down immediately. There is some upside in getting to a deep target, even if he's only getting 2 or 3 targets. If he's getting 2 or 3 targets, though, is the question. These guys have been more in the 1 or 2 or 0. Still 2-1 Cleveland. Bottom 6. Runner on first for Cleveland. No outs. Anybody want to see anything specific DraftKings wise? Jake likes the Knicks captain. Wants him with Vele. Where's Vele? Am I missing him? Is Valet active? I had him out. Tripping me up now. Why the hell did I have Valet out? My bad. I got to take care of that. Do we just skip over him the entire show? Huh. Well, let me get him in there. He's targeted 6 times last week, caught 4 of them for 78 yards. I know I said that somewhere in here. Yeah, I had him in the notes. I knew I talked about him. I just don't have him on the board for some reason. Weird. Glad you pointed that out. 7 o'clock. We can get that updated. Appreciate that, Jake. We got that updated. And obviously, that's another option. Definitely some targeting there. Let's move over to the FanDuel. I'll throw a couple quick FanDuel ones up on the board. Obviously, just a Kamara MVP is going to be super straightforward on FanDuel. Both quarterbacks just to make it extra chalky. And then see how much that difference makes on the FanDuel slate. I like Group E, and I like the Saints defense. Denver's defense is only 85. Not against that construction. That's not great. I think you give Nick somebody to throw it to, I guess. I did. Rattler somebody to throw it to. Yuck. FanDuel's just impossible. If you put the most popular player in the MVP spot, you basically can't make a lineup on FanDuel that's less than like 25 dupes. If you were to say Denver defense MVP on FanDuel, we didn't do any captain defense over here, but I'm sure it's going to be played. We'll see if it came up in the Sims. That's where I want to check that one. But just for the hell of it. I made that as weird as I could, and it's still 15 dupes. Like weird trending toward realistic. Gotta hate all of these options. It's so much more difficult for FanDuel. It's just dumb. Yeah, they're all going to wind up around 15 dupes. It's a lame exercise for FanDuel. It's more fun for DK. Let's see what a Denver captain looks like on DK. Denver Knicks. I'll even go against Rattler there. I'll give these guys their connection for a touchdown. We'll favor Denver's defense anyway. 87 apiece. We're already way down in ownership. Devontae probably makes some sense there. And then just whatever. Lutz is an easy play to make there. Went down to 12. That's not bad. You can take it obviously in different directions. Get the double defense. Ooh, sub 10. People love defense this year. As far as like looking for that kind of a lineup goes, that's moderately playable. Again, in a game that's expecting sub 40 points. Not unplayable. Not great, though. Let's look at some Ace Mine results. And then I'll punch out so that I can get the projections updated. Make sure that everybody who should be in them is in them. Make sure so that you guys can actually see these. DraftKings up first. Mr. Kamara in that top lineup in the captaincy. Some Saints defense crawling into a bunch of those up at the top. Broncos defense working its way through as well. A lot of Krull working its way through. I'm glad to see that after mentioning him. Overall, Kamara, though, if you saw it over here, 55% owned in the flex role and 44% owned in the captain role across the top 150 lineups in this sim on DraftKings. So again, significantly owned on both sites. He's going to be like 90%, or should be. So if he's trending below that, put him in more of your captains, more of your flex spots. It's perfectly fine. He is easily the most likely scorer. It just makes it more difficult to create unique lineups if you're just loading it up that way. But he's just totally individually justifying a pretty significant investment. Bo Nix, 53% flex, but pulling 29% captain for Bo Nix. That's not insignificant, and that means you're getting 29 there and 44% there. So a big chunk of the captain shares are going to those two players. Rattler drawing 15% himself. So that's basically most of it going to those three. It is basically the three most obvious guys as far as scoring upside. But Cortland Sutton pulling just 3% of the captaincy, or 7% of the captaincy, and 3% in the flex roll. That's actually a little surprising. Krull getting into a captain spot? That I didn't expect. Just 1% of them across 150, so that's kind of an outlier lineup to creep up that high. That guy spent $49.5 overall. Brings back $160 on average. Not the worst lineup I've ever seen. I don't know that I would go that route, though, with the Krull captain. I think he functions a little bit better in this role back here. You're seeing some groupie click on through. Again, all the defense options. 40% of the Saints D, they didn't get into the captain spot. Broncos D, 1% of the top 150 did get the Broncos defense in the captain spot. We'll see if we can find it. 27% exposure in the top and across the flex roll in the top 150. That was pretty significant. McLaughlin in there, 8%, 1%. Juwan, pretty significant exposure at 27% across the flex rolls. Devin's here. Devin says, I'm usually never the kicker guy, but I feel like it may be a kicker night. I can see another of the drives getting past midfield and stalling. Yeah, like I was saying earlier, I could definitely see a lot of this game just taking place between the 30s and kicking field goals. So wouldn't surprise me at all. Again, Groupie got in there, 22% of the flex roll on DraftKings, and I'm sure that Will Lutz is not far behind. Yeah, 8%, 1% for Lutz. So it's actually favoring Groupie kind of fairly heavily. I imagine that's on ownership. But both kickers definitely, I can see pretty heavy involvement. Same thing for defenses. See if we can find that Denver captain. Well, that didn't do it. Do it the long way. Probably should have just scrolled. Boys, if you're out there, an uncheck all would be great. Made the entry builder angry. It didn't like that filter. Uh-oh. When in doubt, give it a reload. Problem solved. Let's just scroll down and see if we can find it. I really want to see what that Denver defense looks like. Give you guys a look at all of these. Get some ideas. There it is. One of the last ones in our top 150, but it squeaked in. Broncos, Kamara, Rattler, Javonte, Jawan, and Will. Interesting. It's not a terrible lineup. I actually think that the game script there makes some relative sense. You don't always get that from the optimizer mashing things together, but if you think that through, Kamara doing his work up and down the field. If he scores a touchdown, irrelevant as long as Denver's defense creates a scoring event or a bunch of sacks or whatever. Rattler and Jawan, you would need to hook up for a touchdown against, so that's a little bit of a negative piling those things on. But if you take away the touchdown from Kamara and you give it to them in that game script, and that's the only touchdown, then it's perfectly fine. And that there's no reason to expect that that wouldn't happen or couldn't happen. And then Javonte Williams, Will Lutz on the Denver side to go with the defense, just kind of straightforward as far as that direct correlation goes. No issues with that as a lineup. It's playable. But again, came in as one of the bottom ranked out of the top 150 here. But that's against a pool that was created for 117,000 entries. So call it probably made 50 some odd thousand uniques. You can find that out right here. That was out of, good estimate, 51,184 unique entries. So being the 147th or 146th best out of that many still makes it a very good lineup. FanDuel, it's Nix and Rattler. A little bit of Kamara straight on down the line there. It's actually, I'm kind of surprised in those top lineups it's not just all Kamara dominant. He's at such popularity that it's pushing him out of there almost entirely in these top lineups. He's still, if we scroll down all of this, I bet he's probably in like half of these captain roles. You're seeing him pile up a bunch now. Yeah, a lot more him and Rattler, just straightforward handing off shares down there. But you can see some justification. Rattler and Nix getting involved up there. Obviously, those are the next two most obvious guys. But I was very much expecting to see a straight line of Kamara shares going down the board there. Javonte creeping into one there. Not that many other guys outside of the two quarterbacks in Kamara. But at least you are getting the mix between those three players pretty significantly. Overall on FanDuel, Rattler got into 81%, Nix in 77%, Kamara in 57%. That's the overall shares. Denver's defense is the next most highly owned thing, though, behind those three offensive pieces. That's pretty significant involvement, 37% for Denver's defense. That's, again, across all the positions, but primarily I expect in the flex role here. There's one. And there's another. So significant involvement from the Denver D. Cortland Sutton in a fair amount. Bub and Jawan. Basically straight line through expectations. Will Lutz, Blake Groupie involved in basically the same amount that they were on DraftKings. 12% in Groupie's direction, 8% for Lutz. 23% going toward the Saints defense. Again, I do think that the Saints could be involved, especially with the efficiency with which that secondary has picked off the pass this season. Against Bo Nix, there's no reason to really expect that New Orleans couldn't be involved for an interception. And once that ball's in the defense's hands, anything can happen. So they're still interesting. I think as the lower owned, less popular of these two defenses, that means the exact same thing. Just tripping over the rhetoric. As the lower owned of the two defenses, I think they could be interesting, and they're coming up that way in the low to mid 20s here. It's now 3-1 Guardians. First and third, 2 outs, still the bottom of the 6th. Tim Maison for the Yankees, not great. Up 2-0, but really wanted this one. Put the stranglehold on the series. A lot of time left. Anyway, what there's not a lot of time left is this show. I think we're basically at the end here. We've seen a lot of lineups. We've talked a lot of results. We've talked a lot of spots. I got to jump and get the projections updated on the site, make sure everybody's included. I'm not sure if whoever came up just before Valet is in the projections that are on the site or not. I don't know why he slipped off the board there, but I'll make sure to get it updated right away, and we'll take care of that. Check out rotoscouts.com for all your projection needs. One last time, every single plan under $1 a day, regardless of which plan you pick. It's weekly, it's monthly, it's quarterly. There's a scale of prices, but it gives you access on every plan to every piece of content for all the major sports that we're covering for every single main slate. So check it out, under $1 a day at rotoscouts.com. Hit the like button here, hit the subscribe so you know when these go live. We'll be back tomorrow for a main slate show. Break down the full 10 and 11 game main slates for DraftKings and FanDuel. Right now, go Yanks. We'll have NBA projections next week. And go you guys. Somebody out there, good luck out there. Somebody go win something. We'll see you tomorrow. Later.